Hi, welcome to our third episode of Clicks and Conversations. My name is Nicole Grodesky, and I have about 15 plus years experience in SEO and content creation. I'll be representing the SEO side of this conversation. And with me, I have Christina Scanapiego. Christina?
Hi. Yeah, I am coming from the content and brand development side of things. I've been a content leader for 15 plus, almost 20 years, and I'm excited to get into things. I thought today we would talk about the customer journey, something we all need to talk about and think about, whether your business is making sneakers or software or anything in between. By now, we know that the customer journey is not linear. We used to think about it as a funnel, but now, we've talked about the messy middle, the bow tie model, and all the new buzzwords we've heard ad nauseum. But the question is, if we agree that that consumers aren't following predictable stages, what does that mean for how we approach content and customer engagement? Do we stop treating them like they're ticking boxes in a funnel? We know that their journey can be unpredictable. It can be emotional. They can lose connection with you. They can re-find you. And how do we adjust our content strategies to meet this new reality? I want to talk to Nicole because I also want to dive into where SEO fits into that picture. We're not pushing them down a linear path, but we're meeting them where they are. We're answering their questions and we're adapting to their needs in real time. What do you think, Nicole?
Yeah, wow, that was a lot. Thanks for that intro. So just for the audience, people listening today, Christina and I talked about this for about an hour yesterday, previous to recording. Like, we're just kind of like, I feel like we're not going to answer all the questions today. Like, this is kind of like an ongoing conversation that I think a lot of SEO strategists have with their content people. And I will say that SEO is sometimes we tend to think very data-driven, very linear. And sometimes we're just so focused on traffic, keywords, that type of content strategy that sometimes we blow right past the customer journey. And so that's why I appreciate working with content creatives such as yourself, because you always bring us back to that. And I think that, like, right now, the way search is evolving, like how we talked about yesterday, what we talked about is like, you know, all these different platforms. Like, now we have the AI search platforms, not just ChatGPT, but Perplexity. And then, there's uh, Google's search overviews, AI overviews. And, it's just made it all that more complex, the customer journey, right? Like, it's definitely not linear. It's kind of scatterbrained. It's all over the place. But there's YouTube, there's Reddit now. Reddit's been around for a while, but it just seems like more and more that's popping up as a potential like strategy or place to be. And yeah, I feel like as marketers, we have to just evolve with this ever-changing landscape. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel
Yeah,
about search. We're kind of like figuring it out as we go. We're building the plane as it's flying.
it's definitely evolving. And I think that's why it's really important when you're in any kind of marketing to be curious. And, I wouldn't sell yourself short when it comes to the customer journey because I've worked with you in the past where you've helped me research, what are my potential customers looking for that's going to lead them to purchase whatever my brand is offering. So I think SEO, as it has been, can still help in that market research, and leading your customers. It can help lead your customers through their journey. I think that, speaking of curiosity, I think that it helps to break down any silos you're in. And I think that will go for the SEO side too, because you know as well as I do that content doesn't live in isolation. You have to work cross-functionally with almost every team that's in your brand or helping build your brand, or your product, you know, and you have to get insights from everywhere and figure out how to apply them to content.
Yeah, totally. And like, I don't know. I just think it's kind of funny, like the when it comes to digital marketing or just like marketing in general, like there's marketing and there's sales, right? Sales are like transactional. They're like sell, 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 like buy now, sign up, like do this, do that. It's very much like you're being told what to do. And we know that people don't like being told what to do, right? So I always like kind of joke that like digital marketing is like dating, right? It's like, you don't
Everything's like dating, but yes.
everything's like dating, really, yeah. But it's like, you're not gonna like ask somebody to marry you on the first date. I mean, if you did, they wouldn't take you seriously, and they, or you might never see them again. Um, but or you might marry them, like I married, my wife. But just kidding. She was like, "Do you want to get married?" And I was like, "Right now?" And she's like, "No, no, I mean like someday, like." Okay, so anyways, yeah, so content's like that.
She was ready to purchase.
She was ready to purchase. She was very far down the funnel. That's hilarious. Yeah, so yeah, it's like content, like you were saying, like meet people where they're at. And it's like, well, where are they at? I think that's a big part of it too, is like understanding who your target customer is, where they're at. Do they want to consume like SaaS software tips on their Instagram? Probably not, like maybe not. Maybe,
Right.
I don't know, but how would you? That's like what you were saying yesterday is like every channel has its own strategy. So like I think a lot of marketers are scratching their heads like, oh, do we do a content strategy for Instagram? And what does that look like? It's not going to look like our blog. It's not going to look like, your webinar series. It's going to look totally different.
Yeah, so each channel should have its strategy native to that channel. But then, I sometimes think in marketing, we've been talking in circles for 2 decades. Because
Yes.
on the one hand, what you're talking about is the emotional journey of your customer. And, they don't want to be sold to immediately. I've also had directives and also done some A/B testing where some of those hard selling CTAs work a little bit better than the softer, fluffier messaging that might be a little more friendly, a little less of a hard sell. But and then we come back to, is your content just transactional? Are you owning the whole space? Are you, are you meeting people where they're at, not necessarily with a hard sell, or not necessarily, there might be different types of content formats that are better for different channels. And then we run into, well, a lot of it is considered, brand awareness content. And does that have an ROI? And you have stakeholders to answer to. And are you putting resources and, money into that type of content? And is just engagement, are you just looking at vanity metrics? And then everyone has a problem with that. And is it making
Yeah.
money for the company? And I just think we're talking in circles. So
Yeah.
it is a head scratcher for everybody. And, we focused on top of the funnel content, and we think it's been overhyped. And it's easy to think that it doesn't convert. On the other hand, if brands really want to emulate a media company, let's say, or like a publication, and have multimedia content everywhere, that traditional top of the funnel content is what they're ultimately going to end up doing on certain channels. I think then what we really, in that case, should think about is the emotional journey of the customer, that helps them, guide them to the next phase organically. As I'm thinking about these sort of quote unquote new takes, I'm struggling to find what's really that different outside of the tactics, outside of the channels that we're relying on, or outside of the channels we're focusing on, which, I don't know that there's a main channel now. I think each channel has its strategy, but I am struggling to figure out how that's different from what I did when I was working at media brands 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't really think it's like that much different, right? It's just like, again, it's content, it's meeting people where they're at, but then it's also like, where are they? There's so many new platforms, right? And then it's like, how do you meet them where they're at on this new platform kind of thing. And like, I don't know, not to like put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, I thought like maybe we could think of like who's doing it right. Like we have a lot of people trying to figure out how to do it right, but like, is there any one brand that you can think of, whether it's B2B tech or direct to consumer CPG, like who do you think off the top of your head would you say is just crushing it? Like they're everywhere you want to be.
Well, if I'm going to talk like a marketer, everybody loves Duolingo. If I'm going to think about consuming media, I would take like a media property like, I watch streaming services. I consume media like compulsively. I watch so many shows that I'm overly invested in, and then I listen to all the podcasts about the shows and then I'm like overly invested in the podcasters. And there's a media sort of group called The Ringer, and they have every part of popular culture and streaming shows and prestige shows and reality shows covered by great, journalistic and entertaining podcasters. And, they're native to every single channel I'm on. They have Discord groups. They, post their reaction takes to, did you watch The Last of Us? Something crazy happened. They have like, their reaction takes on TikTok, and they, so they're that to me is maybe how a brand could emulate content, or approach content. If it's, again, it has to come back to the brand and to the brand voice and identity and mission, and and you have to do it right. You have to behave like journalists, I think, if you're going to try and emulate a media brand.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, as you were talking, I was like, we talked about this yesterday, like brands, but we both have experience in journalism and media. That's our background. And so that's kind of interesting. Like you fell in the content camp, I fell in the SEO camp, but our backgrounds are kind of similar. And then, I have even had these discussions with brand owners, like, or marketers that are on the client side, the brand side. And I'm like, brands can be the publisher now. Like the game has changed, where it was like in the past, you had a PR firm and you're contacting journalists and you were trying to get coverage. And there was like a really different relationship between especially in the surf industry, how the brands kind of monopolized the feature article stories in the print surf publications, right? And then the game kind of changed. Now it's all online, and like basically it comes down to the media. For media brands specifically, it comes down to like the revenue model kind of completely changed, right? And so like, but brands can become publishers, and that's also changed too. Now brands, they're not so much invested in like the media outlets to push like feature articles of their team riders or their board short guide or their wetsuit guide, which they still
Red Bull.
for
Red
that.
Bull
Yeah,
would be
Red
good.
Bull,
Would be
GoPro
a good,
example. Yeah.
yeah. So I think of a brand like that as their media source, and I was thinking about that the other day. Obviously the print magazines don't really exist. I think they maybe exist for some niche kind of old school collectors that still like to have that physical piece of beauty on their coffee table. If it's high quality paper and all of that, but they don't need to exist because those brands, like take a Red Bull, has become the media source where everybody can go get entertained about surfing. But then let's take something like, Duolingo can be really fun. It's a bit more consumer facing, but then take a business software. How do you really become a media outlet as a business software? Because can that be entertaining? I mean, my thoughts, anything can be entertaining. But often, especially with so many young startups and small businesses, it is about revenue. So you have to think about conversion goals and revenue all the time. And then you being in SEO, where's the overlap?
Yeah, I think the overlap comes in with like knowing and understanding your target audience's pain points and asking those questions and answering them, right? So like, yeah, why aren't brands like having podcast series where they're interviewing experts in their field and then they're having,
Because when people listen,
that's the thing is like, would they listen? And they should be listening because you need to make it interesting. And I just kind of had an aha moment. Like brands need to hire marketers with a journalistic background, really. I think that is like a key kind of differentiator, honestly. Like there's so many people in SEO marketing that I've talked to, even on the client side, that they don't have that journalistic mindset. They don't have that journalistic background. And I think that as a journalist, if you have that background, like you're always trying to find that hook. You're always trying to find that interesting angle, whether it's a feature article or even like a factual type, like, story where it's very like just newsworthy and plain and simple, like an update in the industry or something like that. You're still gonna get like a interesting quote from somebody. That's like what you're taught in school, right? Is like like get a quote from somebody interesting. Like make it interesting. How do you make it interesting?
yeah,
I just had like a
inform and entertain.
inform and entertain in a very like creative, like interesting, funny way. Like humans are naturally curious. That's what we do. We search things. We want to learn. We want to know what's going on. We want to be in the know. So as a brand, you have to position yourself, maybe not just as being exclusive, but being like, like inclusive in a way of like we are in the know and we want you to be in the know. And then that attracts people and that entertains them and they're being informed. So that again, it's like top of the funnel, but like maybe now we're shifting more into people want to be entertained. So like they want to know what's going on, but they also like want to be entertained. So like as a brand marketer and content creator and strategist, we need to come together to like you just said, like inform and entertain, not just inform, but entertain. So.
Inform, entertain, target the right queries in the right touch points with content that speaks to them emotionally and functionally and doesn't bore them half to death. I wonder if we're boring.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
How can we make us more entertaining?
Yeah, I don't know. Make I was gonna have like a laugh track, maybe like when I make a joke and you don't laugh. Like I think I might overlap that. Actually, I'm gonna go and find a track and make sure that it's in there. The audio. No. Yeah, so that is an interesting question. I think we're pretty entertaining. No, I'm just kidding. So where were we? Okay, so I think that yeah, now you you actually gave a nice segue of like, how do we balance that? Where's the overlap with like the entertainment and like, making sure that
Conversion and revenue.
we're sticking to the conversions. And I think that I think that happens in the kind of like the brainstorming and planning phase when you've already outlined your target audience. You already know how to get them emotionally invested, like you talked about at the top of the cast. And then make sure that whatever you're creating and however you're talking about whatever it is you're talking about, whatever topic you're on, that you're weaving in that information and you're weaving in that entertainment somehow, is there a formula? Maybe there is. Maybe there's a formula that you constantly test and reiterate and find one that works for you, and then you apply that to all the other content that you create. I think the biggest bottleneck for a lot of brands is like they know they need to create content, and they know it needs to be informative, and they know that it needs to entertain. But first of all, they get stuck on like how to do that, and then they get stuck on like actually executing on it. Like I think that people get really excited about it and then they're like, okay, go. And then you start to create it and then like people are like in marketing agencies or marketing firms or client side, people are like, wait, what are we doing again? What's our goal again? Is this going to drive revenue? Everyone wants to like move fast and break things, and like good content takes time, right? You can't really rush it. But you can optimize the process and the flow and try to go to market a lot faster. That's the trick, I feel like, in today's world. But
yeah. So I think to sum up things, we're finding the audience, attracting them, being curious in our approach, engaging with them emotionally, balancing SEO with conversion, converting them, and then repurposing all those success stories. If I think about it in simple terms, did we solve it?
The customer journey is definitely nonlinear, and it's getting more and more complicated, especially with AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, these AI search engines. I was at a networking event last night, and so many people, it was like a tech startup networking event, and so many people are just like, SEO is dead. And, I think that it's because SEO, or people don't really think of SEO as like content and like market research, and like kind of, traditional marketing, or fitting into their traditional marketing mix as it should, right? They think of it as like keywords and backlinks, which it is for Google, but SEOs need to put on their journalism hats. They need to put on their content strategist hats more and more, less of the link building hat.
I think if you're doing your brand right, you will ultimately show up in an LLM search. And I think, there are, YouTube is search. We've talked about this. YouTube is search. There's, audio and voice is search now. And, Reddit is search. So I think you can optimize. I don't think SEO is just about web traffic. Like you said, you can optimize for everything. What I'd end with is the path to purchase isn't just a path. It's a whole series, an ecosystem of touch points, emotions, real-time decisions, and it's messy. But that's where the magic happens. And that's where you should use your creativity and create content that touches customers and helps them find their way no matter where they are.
Yeah, totally agree. And like sometimes it's okay to get back to the basics, remember your target audience, remember your core messaging, remember your goals, and just make sure that you're staying true to that, but also that you're offering something that is informative and entertaining and aligned with your brand. So yeah, great conversation. As always, thank you, Christina, for bringing in your content, branding, and creative background to the conversation. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me. No.
Thank you for having me. Anytime.
Awesome. So, yeah, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about the customer journey. Is SEO dead? Is the customer journey dead? Are we right on track with being, informative and entertaining? And maybe drop a line and just let us know what other kind of topics or other questions this conversation has made you think about. And we will take a look at
Maybe
those.
we should stop calling it SEO. Maybe we should change the
Yes.
verbiage. Maybe we should just call it search.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Search. Yes, no, somebody else said the same thing, or like you're selling like content or content strategy or like content strategists. Our solution is to help drive more traffic and revenue to the brand, to the website. So that is a good assumption. And so we're gonna rebrand SEO, the entire industry, after we get off this call. That's what we're doing right now. Just kidding. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. All right, well, that does it for this episode of Clicks and Conversations. Stay tuned for our next episode.
Peace out.
You.